Let's take a look at what to do if you end up with water spilling under your sink. And this is indeed exactly what happened to me here in my kitchen, which is why all my stuff is out, as we'll get to in a moment. I had an issue where the sink sprayer broke and the water from it was coming back down here and spilling out underneath the sink. So I'm going to tell you exactly what I did and what you can do too in those circumstances. So the first thing that you want to do is obviously to switch off the water or fix whatever the leak is. And in my case, I knew exactly what it was. The sink sprayer was broken, so I'm just not going to use the sink until that's fixed. But if it's a pipe that's loose or anything, or some kind of issue with the fitting, just switch off the water with these knobs in the back, turning that clockwise, or if it's a really bad break, you can switch it off at the main point where the water enters your house, your water meter. So that's the first thing, stop the leak itself, and then try to assess and clean up the damage. And in my case, I had a ton of stuff stored under here, and that got basically totally soaked. So I had a little container with soap and all that kind of stuff that you would normally store underneath your cabinet. So first thing is take out all the items that you've got underneath your cabinet. Clear the whole space out. Then you're going to want to dry up any of the water that's still under there. So I used paper towels and I just soaked up all the water that was in there. And then your next step, you want to dry it out as quickly and thoroughly as possible. So you want to keep the doors open for about 24 hours and then put a fan. I've got a little fan blowing in there. The more powerful, the better. Get that airflow going. Try to get that dry. And you can see looks like some bubbling. I think some of this was here already, but obviously this house is about 35 years old, so people have spilled stuff over the years in here, and we've got some warping, but certainly I had a little bit more. Getting the water out quickly, though, I think is the most important thing. If you can do that, that's going to help a lot. Hopefully it doesn't get into the cabinet further than just the base here. So dry it up with paper towels. Make sure the inside is as dry as possible. Leave those cabinet doors open for at least 24 hours with a fan to provide some airflow. And then once things are drier, which is finally starting to happen here, you can start to get a sense for what the damage is. It's a little bit dry, still a little bit wet. You can see we've got some warping. Again, I'm not sure how much of this may have been pre-existing too, but you've got the particle board in here that's started to warp and get a bit damaged. So we want to make sure this is totally dry, and then I'll probably at a later point in time, once I know it's completely dry, go back and fill this with some wood filler. I'll kind of dig out the particle board that got swollen here, and then fill this with some wood filler and paint it. And hopefully this will look mostly back to normal. But the main thing you're wanting to avoid here, anytime you've got that dampness, is mold growing. So you want to really get it dried out as much as possible, and make sure it's fully dry before you close it up again. And then just check for anything that would suggest mold, like a musty odor in there. If you see any kind of little spores, either white or black, mold spores growing, anything like that, then you want to bring in a professional to deal with that, because you don't want to deal with molds on your own. It's not really a DIY type of thing. Hopefully, if you're proactive and you dry it up, you take the stuff out of there, you let it stay open and air it out, you can avoid that issue. But certainly for the next couple months especially, keep an eye out. Make sure that if you see anything that suggests or smell anything that suggests mold is growing, then bring in a professional. Or if you have any concerns about it, if you have someone in your house that's like immunocompromised or whatever, then you want to bring somebody in and they can do a test of the air in the house to make sure there's no mold. So hopefully, in my case and in yours as well, it'll just dry out. You can repair that damage, and things will be mostly back to normal. How often do you look at the area under your sink? You probably, again, some of this may have been there already, and you wouldn't ever even notice it. But those are the steps to take. And again, if you have any concerns or you feel like the damage is more extensive, not just like some water spilled out, but if this got a burst pipe and it's totally soaked, I would bring in a professional right from the get-go. There's mitigation companies that can help to dry stuff out, that can take the whole thing apart. And especially if you're thinking you might have to make a homeowner's insurance claim or anything like that. You want to get those pros in earlier rather than later. So in my case, thankfully, I think it was just a little water that spilled out from that sink sprayer. I was able to handle it myself here, but again, err on the side of bringing in a pro if you need to. And that's how we deal with the area under our sink getting wet. If you found this useful, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps.